Well, it's not just Joe Biden and Kamala out there losing it. Hillary Clinton has made it back in the spotlight again. I swear she just doesn't want to go away. She is trying to do everything that she can to make sure that Joe Biden gets reelected. Make no mistake, this is on purpose. In a recent interview, she was questioned about this idea of a ceasefire and people being angry towards the Biden administration because they are complicit in genocide against the Palestinian people. We're going to start with that clip. And then we're going to go to another clip from that interview where she criticizes Tucker Carlson. This is actually going to take us into the Tucker Carlson interview. So let's get into this clip first. It says, discussing Hillary Clinton's response to how Americans should protest, specifically the ceasefire in Gaza. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip.
One of the biggest issues for him right now, especially with voters of color, young voters, is Gaza. We're sitting on the campus of Columbia University. This has been a place where there have been a lot of protests that have made national news. Students are decrying what they call censorship. There have been protests. Some people have protested your classes. What is the appropriate way for a university to handle the deep divide and the questions about, what can and what cannot be said in the course of debate?
Well, I think that...
Pause. I just want to go ahead and remind all of you, Hillary Clinton has a position at Columbia University. So when you think about the censorship that happened to the students at Columbia that were supporting the pro-Palestinian protests, just keep in mind, she has a position there.
There's a role for protest, and I think there should be rules set, guardrails set, just like, you have to get a permit to have an event or a march here in New York. And I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not. And I think people who violate the rules have to be held accountable. So from my perspective, you can't have a responsible debate about whatever your point of view is if you're screaming at each other.
Do you think, though?
They're not trying to have a debate with you, though. People who are protesting in support of the Palestinian people, I'm not trying to debate you, Hillary. We're not on stage. This isn't a debate competition. There is no debate. The people are yelling demands, okay? What we want to happen, the ceasefire is a minimum. You cannot stand up there and say that you care about the rights for other oppressed people in this country if you show that you don't care about the rights for oppressed people in another country. You can't do that. People see the hypocrisy. And people are starting to see through the Democratic Party.
Well, I mean, there are people that understand and believe that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide, right? And I would imagine it's hard to say, you can talk about it, you can call it genocide, but you have to do it in this way. No, you can have that conversation.
No, there are people who believe. The ICJ made that determination legally, made the determination. She doesn't want to utter that. She doesn't want to mention that. There are people who think this. The ICJ made the claims based on the evidence that was presented by South Africa, and they made demands of Israel.
Conversation in a classroom, but not screaming about it.
That was Professor Hillary Clinton explaining her views on the wave of ceasefire protests across the U.S. and on college campuses. Joining me to discuss all that is Michelle Goldberg, opinion columnist for the New York Times. Michelle.
I want you to think about what Hillary Clinton just said. She was like, well, yeah, you can discuss all that, but not screaming about it. Hillary Clinton participated in protests, you guys. You guys know about this? When Hillary Clinton was in college, see how easy people forget what they did when they were in school during that time? When Hillary Clinton was in college, she participated in protests. Some of those protests included yelling. You can find the video footage yourself. You can see this in documentaries about Hillary Clinton. So there were yelling at those protests too. Would you say the same thing for all the college students that protested against the war in Vietnam? You see, people sometimes they get older and they forget some of the things that they're criticizing young people for doing today. They did those same things when they were their age. Let's continue a little bit more here.
Oh, thank you for being here. So just for some context here, I mean, Hillary Clinton, yes, former Secretary of State, yes, former senator, former presidential candidate. She has been teaching at Columbia University. She started, I think, the Institute of Global Politics there. Today, she spent 3 hours, as part of a panel talking about the future of Ukraine. This is someone who's grappling with this kind of campus free speech concerns in and around the war in Gaza, quite literally on her front doorstep. I wonder what you make of her sort of delineation that some conversations can happen, but they have to happen in an orderly fashion when you're talking about something like whether genocide has been committed or not.
Well, I would say, it doesn't surprise me that somebody who's a professor or an administrator is not a fan of disruptive protest, right? Especially when often she's the one being disrupted. I kind of feel like it's too much to expect her to cheer that on, even if you do sympathize with the concerns of the protesters. And I think she's right that some of these really thorny questions, like whether Israel's actions in Gaza can be construed as genocide, do require a lot of kind of nuanced conversation about international laws of war rather than just the shouting of slogans. But I was really quite shocked by some of what she said about just her kind of, Anthony Blinken today in Jerusalem is able to say that the civilian casualties in Gaza are unacceptably high. It's really surprising to me not to hear her say that.
Well,
Why? No, it's not surprising to you. Okay, so you're a part of the status quo too. So why would you be surprised that warmonger Hillary Clinton would not say that? Why would you be surprised? Oh, and make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, if Hillary Clinton would have won in 2016, I think we'd still be in the situation with the wars. I think she would have acted the same way that Joe Biden did. Responded to these wars the same way that Joe Biden did. Actually, we probably would have been closer to a war with Russia if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016. So why is this woman surprised? I'm surprised she did not say that.
I asked her point blank, what about Rafah, which the Israelis are reportedly targeting, which is where Palestinians were told to flee. And she said, it's horrible, but effectively it's war, Alex.
So you heard that part? You heard what she said? Hillary Clinton said, yeah, it's horrible, but it's war. There are rules within war. You see, Hillary wants to tell you to obey the rules when it comes to protest because she's the one being yelled at. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But she doesn't want to admit you need to obey the rules when it comes to war. And that means when there are designated safe zones, you are not supposed to strike those zones. Israel has been doing that. Israel has been committing war crimes over and over and over again. They have basically trapped the Palestinian people inside the Gaza Strip. You tell them to move from the north to the south, then you start bombing the south. You tell them to take this evacuation route, then you start bombing the exit so they can't leave. So Israel has been committing war crimes, and Hillary Clinton is not going to call that out because she's a part of it. When I showed you open secrets, the top politicians that have been receiving money from the Israeli lobby, Hillary Clinton was in the top 5. Joe Biden was number 1, taking over 4 million from Israel lobby. Hillary Clinton took over 2 million from the Israeli lobby. So she's never going to sit up here and admit that Israel is wrong. And if this pundit who's on this show, if she would have done the same thing that I did, she would know why Hillary Clinton would not make that statement.
It feels like there are a number of divides here. One, there's a sort of like just divide on how you understand the nature of war, how you understand the nature of war, what you think Israel should be allowed to do in its purported own defense. And then it feels like there's very much a generational divide on this too, right? And I think you saw the early iteration of that in Biden's initial response to this, right? It was as if he really just didn't understand where a whole sort of, where the American youth in large part are on this issue, and they see it wildly differently.
Right. And I think, I'm glad that you put it like that there are separate divides, because there's a divide about kind of who is the aggressor, in which case, I side with people who say that, Hamas started this round of hostilities with their rampage and massacre on October 7th. But the question is, that doesn't license anything in response, right? Hillary Clinton.
They did not. This is not start October 7th. Notice they're all repeating the same narrative. All these people have the same talking points. These are the PR talking points. They send it out across the networks and everybody uses the same talking point. They always want to bring it back just to October 7th and not about what has been happening to the Palestinian people before. And I want to be very clear. Under international law, occupied people have the right to resist. We'll play a little bit more here and we'll go to the next clip.
Feel like gestured towards, yes, Israel has to follow the laws of war. But I would like to know whether she thinks they are following the laws of war, because there has been a lot of evidence, not just in these truly horrific and unacceptable levels of civilian casualties. You know, we have the New York Times reported just this week on the social media videos of Israeli soldiers, you know, kind of committing vandalism, bulldozing and blowing up civilian infrastructure in a way that kind of is very unclear that there's any military purpose. There is a lot of evidence that Israel is not taking every step possible, far from it, to protect the people of Gaza. And there's not really, and you hear the rhetoric coming from Israeli leaders that's extremely heedless of Palestinian life.
Well, to that end, she's really clear that Bibi Netanyahu needs to go. I think it's interesting that you have this kind of lacuna around the aggressions of Israel, the potential genocidal acts, the war crimes it's potentially committed. And she's not going to necessarily address that, but she will say,
well, that's a consensus issue. I mean, I feel like that's pretty close to a consensus issue in Israel itself. I mean, not a consensus issue, but you have overwhelming opposition at this point to.
Okay, we're going to go to the second clip, because then she also was asking Hillary Clinton about Tucker Carlson doing this interview with Vladimir Putin. And we're going to get into that in just a second. Listen to this.
I mean, he's like a puppy dog. You know, he somehow has, after having been fired from so many outlets in the United States, I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with an outlet, because he is a useful idiot. He says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about.
So I don't think Hillary Clinton should be the one to say that someone else says things that are not true. Because of the amount of lies that have come from her and her husband, I'm pretty sure top the other people that she's comparing it to.
Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview, because through him, he can, continue to lie about what his, objectives are in Ukraine and what he expects to see happen. It's really quite sad that not just somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has, as I said, been fired so many times because he seems unable to, correlate his reporting with the truth.
You know what she's doing here, guys? Instead of focusing on the fact that what Vladimir Putin would have to say during that interview, she's trying to find a way to demonize Tucker Carlson. And look, I'm not here to praise Tucker Carlson. I got issues with Tucker Carlson too, but she's trying to demonize Tucker Carlson so that you won't actually take the time to watch the interview. Or if you do watch the interview, you won't believe what is said during that interview. You see, this is one way that they do this. They go against people. They try to assassinate your character. So she's trying to assassinate his character. So that way you tell yourself in your mind, I shouldn't believe anything that's said in this interview because this guy's been fired a couple of times. By the way, Tucker Carlson wouldn't have to even do this interview if mainstream media would have been doing their job. The same way that they interviewed Zelensky multiple times on their outlets, the same way they could have interviewed Vladimir Putin as well. So the American people could have heard both sides, but this is on purpose. They don't want you to hear that other side. That's why they haven't interviewed him. You would think more people will wake up to this, considering the lies that we've been told about wars in this country and considering the fact that they lied about the Iraq war. You would think more people will wake up to this.
But also because it's a sign that there are people in this country right now who are like a fifth column for Vladimir Putin. And why? I don't know. I mean, why are certain Republicans throwing their lot in? Why are, other Americans basically believing Putin? Why did Trump believe Putin more than our 11 intelligence agencies?
I don't know. Do you have a working theory?
I do have a working theory.
Why would we believe you, Hillary? Why would we believe you? Well, not everyone does. Not everyone does. In fact, Jose Vega actually caught this recent confrontation that Hillary Clinton experienced at Columbia University. Hillary Clinton has just been interrupted by 3 different protesters. Guys, you got to love it. You got to love this.
Thank you very much.
Diane Ronald Clinton.
That's my name. That's right.
War criminal. The people of Libya, the people of Iraq, the people of Syria, the people of Yemen, the people of Palestine, as well as the people of America will never forget.
Violating the university code of I'm asking you to leave. The delegates will now escort you out of the building. Thank you. Can you, sir?
Thank you so much.
Free!
Sorry.
Free Palestine!
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Free Palestine! Free! Free Palestine! Free! Free Palestine!
I'm sorry. It's the look on her face.
Okay. Let me thank all of you for coming because this is such an important subject. And as you just heard from Milan, it is one that she and I and so many others have been focused on for decades. And yelling doesn't solve the problem. The kind of hard work and the work that you will hear from the panelists today, I think it's important that we, okay, all right, we're gonna stop a minute, and I don't, if, you know what, why don't all of you just interrupt me so that you won't be interrupting our panelists, so that we don't have this kind of disruption when we have people who are real experts in this area. And so I think it's important to focus on the event we're here. People are free to protest, but they are not free to disrupt events or classes. And that is going to be the standards that we follow here and going forward. So when we think about
So, yeah, by the way, you are free to disrupt classes. By the way, you are free to do that. Hillary Clinton knows that. So it's just wild, man. It's absolutely wild. Let me go to some of the comments here, but you can see, guys, they're already bringing out the guns. They're already bringing out Hillary Clinton. Just wait for it. Barack Obama is going to be making those appearances soon, too. Don't be surprised if they get Michelle Obama to make these appearances to help you or help Joe Biden and pull him across the line. They're going to pull out all of the people this time because Joe Biden is looking so bad and his numbers are so bad. So they're going to pull out all of them. Hillary, Obama, Michelle Obama, like anybody that they can to try to help Joe Biden win. Isn't that sad?